Welcome to the fastest stop in town. Today on the Succah daf Lamed, we are going to begin on Lamed Amud Aleph, about 7 lines from the top. We were discussing in the beginning of this third parak of Alula that we understand if it's dry that it is puzzle. It doesn't matter if it's the first or the second day of Yom Tov, because there's an issue of Hadar. And as Rashi says, Zek Yandehu requires that the lulav has to be hadar. The question is by gezel. We know when it comes to stealing on the first day, it says lokachtem lechem b'yom rishon. But what's wrong with the second day? After all, there's no chisarna b'lechem. So the Gemara says because of a mitzvah haba b'avera. Now we continue. V'yom Rav Yochanan, Mishum Rav Shimon ben Yochai, Ma'anet Siv. What does the following pasuk mean in Yeshaya? Ki ani Hashem oyev mishpat, I Hashem love justice, Saini gezel ba'oil, and I hate when it comes to a stolen sacrifice. Mashal melech basav adam shahay oiver al beis hameches, that he's passing the place where they collect taxes. Amar lavadav, he says to a servant, Tenu meches l'moichsim, give taxes to the tax collector. So below doesn't make any sense. Why are you paying the toll, the easy pass? After all, all that money is going directly to your coffers anyway. It's going to be going to your palace. So what's the point of you giving any of it? I want people to see that I give. Why? I don't want people to think that I am skipping out paying taxes. They'll probably end up doing the same. So I want to be able to set the right tone, to be the proper role model for others. From me, you will be able to learn. And you should distance yourself and run away from stealing. Itmar nami, Amrav Ami Yavish Pasum Meshain Hadar. So we said a dry lulav is pasul, it's not hadar. Gazul Pasum Mishum Dahavilei Mitzvah Ba'Bavera. Now this is where we mentioned in yesterday's daf, there's actually a machlokas. Who pligi Rav Yitzchak. Yom Rav Yitzchak Bar Nachmeni Omer Shmuel. In the name of Shmuel, he says Lo Shanu El B'Yom Tov Rishon. The only time there's an issue is dafka on the first day of Sukkot. Since a person can be yotze with a borrowed lulav because there's no issue of lechem, so too when it comes to gezela, which again is a shtickle difficult, and the Mefarshim grapple over this. It sounds like Shmuel doesn't hold there's an issue of mitzvah ba'avera. Of course, it is a mitzvah, and the next thing you did is connected to the avera that you did. But l'chayra, he holds that when it comes to a mitzvah ba'avera, you could still be mekayim the mitzvah. If you look in the Gilyon Hashas on the side, is the Yesham Desarch Litin Tam L'Shmuel to l'svir le-mitzvah ba'avera. Now, kol panim b'yamtiv sheni d'Rabbana, mikol makam Ashera Pasul Mishum Tsusas, etc. Dilma Likra Min Habakal Haitzi Haneved Tapagli Mishum Mitzvah Ba'Bavera. Again, ayin over there, you definitely asked the question. Now, it seems that Shmuel doesn't hold there's the concept of Mitzvah Ba'Bavera. Ayin Sham. So, Master Rav Nachman. So, therefore, question 7, when it comes to, this is a hard question, because you would just think the Mishnah, Lulav Gazel, it's possible. There's actually a machlokas. On the first day, everyone holds possible. On the second day, is a machlokas. Fine. So, Master Rav Nachman Yitzchak. So, he asks a question. It says, Lulav Gazel Yavish Pasul. Now, it says, stolen is pasul, Hashoyel Kosher. Now, the fact that it used the language stolen is mashma. Stealing is obviously a lot worse than borrowing it. You're borrowing it and you're returning it. You're not a bad guy. You're not a thief. So, it must be that borrowing is allowed. Now, Amos, when is it allowed? You can't borrow it because it's not yours. It has to be lechem, it has to be yours. So when the Mishnah says a chiluk between stealing and borrowing. It can't be Yom Tov Rishon. Elam Yom Tov Sheni. Tani Guzzle Posel. So it's a kasha. How can you say that stealing is allowed? Well, it's not allowed, but you fulfilled your obligation of the lulav with a stolen lulav on Yom Tov Sheni. What do you mean? The Mishnah seems to, we can make a diuk. It says that something stolen is not allowed. Mashma borrowed is allowed. That could only be on the second day. So the Gemara answers like this: Omer Rava L'om Yom Tov Rishon. Really, our Mishnah is only talking about the first day, according to Shmuel. Second day, you're right. When it comes to the second day, there's no issue of mitzvah baba there, and therefore you could use a lulav guzzle. So the question is, why would you think you could use a stolen lulav? The lulav boy karma. Lulav boy shayel lulav didehu. You don't need to mention a case about borrowing because it's not yours. It's definitely not yours. So certainly it's a chisaron of b'chem. Avol gazel emastam gazel yish balamhu. Ukididei dami kamash malon. There's a concept, as we said on yesterday's daf, actually at the top of the Talmud. That's a concept of yush. When there's yush balam, it's a question of yush kedi. It's kind of just the yush. If you gave up hope and you said vaylo chasaron kiss, as it says in El Metzias, you say, you know what, I lost it. I have no expectations of getting it back. So it's like you're mafker. It's ownerless. You don't have any you have no physical connection to it anymore. It's not yours. So therefore it's not yours. So maybe gezel through yish is kaina, and therefore it's l'chem. Kamashmon even gezel now. Ormeluhu Ravuna Lahanu Avankari. So he brings down the story or a case of a vankri. Rashi says, Tegri kol davar l'shtaker boy. This is just peddlers that they sell things. Could go in kelim katanim, small vessels, machdin, umasrikin, mesrikais, needles, combs, vululavin. Okay, so they sell things. And kizavnisu asma akum. When you want to purchase an asa, which is hadas, from an akum, lo tigzu oy atoin. You should not be the one that cuts it down yourself. Ella ligzu inhu v'yoyev l'chu. Let them cut it down, and then let them hand it over to you. That's the proper procedure. So my time, what's the difference if I cut the asa or you do it and then give it to me afterwards? The Gemara says like this: Stam of gechavim gazlani arasaninhu. When it comes to land, we say that it's actually stolen. Says Rashi, Gazli Rasim Yisrael ninhu. He throws in the word Yisrael. That he stole, this land is Jewish land. Then Rashi says, the sta of Shema Oisa Karkam Yisrael Havi. It's interesting language. So maybe this land is actually not theirs. It's stolen land. As we continue to lamed on the base, so we can understand where we're going with this. The karka ein and exelis. You're not able to steal land, even though they're sitting on this land. But as Rashi says, Toimer ein kunuya legazlan mishum yish lo oyan lecheskas balehahi. It belongs to the original owner. So therefore, you can't steal it and all of a sudden you're the owner. Of course, in Cheskas Abatim it discusses how a person can be kaina through chazaka. Okay, ayin over there. So the truth is, this land potentially belongs to a Jew. Hilka, ligzua inhu. Let them cut it off, and then they'll give it to you. Kihechi, they'll have a yish balam biodaihu, didhu v'shinu harashos biodaihu. So what's happening is that by the time it's given to you in your hands, there's yish balam. Probably the Jewish person who may have owned this land is never expecting to get it back. Unfortunately, this happens while we're in Gullus. And once it goes from one person's hands to the other, that's Shini Rishus. So everyone holds that Yish together with Shini Rishus would be Kaina. However, if you do it yourself, that's a problem. So where says 1 second. So, Ki Gozu Avankri Lahavi Yish Balam Biyadayu. Let's say that the Jew cuts it himself. There's still Yish Balim. Shini Rishus Biyadam. it's still Shina Rishus. It's still going from one property to another property. So what difference does it make if they chop it off? It's still going from their property to your property. So why do we say that you shouldn't cut it off? We're talking about that the Hoshana that the Avankri wants it themselves. In other words, the question is like this: if in fact it's going directly to you, so it's going to go to the market, to the peddler, and then to you, it's the Shina Rishus. However, if they themselves want to use it, then there was no Shina Rishus, and therefore that's the reason why it needs to be first cut off by someone else. Says Rashi, "Ba'oisam shehim kainin," those that acquire it with sarcham latzisbo, they want it for themselves to fulfill their obligation. Okay, TA 10. Hakaina hoishana min havankri, purchase it from a merchant. Shekainin min ha'akum ve'im sarach lichshaish shehu gazel ve'im yoitzin bo madua. So we said you do not have to be worried because you have again Yish and Shinoi Rishus. Correct the Gemara. Liknu b'Shinoi Maisa. You don't have to worry about Shinoi Rishus because Shinoi Rishus and Yish. However, Shinoi Maisa is so strong, changing the actual action by taking the lulav, the hadas, the rava, and tying it up, so it was something else, and now you're tying it up and making it as part of the mitzvah. So the Gemara gives two answers. That's not a Shinoi Maisa because kasavar lulav ain't sarach eged. It doesn't need to be tied up, as we saw this previously in the first parak. Even if you want to say that it does need to be tied with a hadas and a rava, question TB11. And the answer is because either it doesn't need eged, you don't have to do it at all, and if you do require it, you can tie it up, you can easily undo it. So it's chaz briyaso. It can always go back to its original place, and therefore because of that, that's not considered to be a proper Shina Maisa. Finally, the Gemara asks, why don't we say, instead of Shina Maisa, okay, it's not a Shina Maisa. Instead of worrying about the Shina Rishus, you have Yish and Shina Hashem. Yimikar Havli Asa. Originally it was called Asa, Vahashta, as we continue to Lamed Aleph Lamed Aleph, Hoshana. Now it's called Hoshana. So our answer is Mikar Nami Asa Hoshana Karle. Originally, even when it was an Asa, it was also called Hoshana. It was still called Hoshana, says Rashi. Hashem Shiragil Oigdan Hoshana B'chad. The answer is, and we're going to stop there, that when it comes to this Asa, it's also called Hoshana. So even though maybe it was originally called an Asa, and then now we more call it Hoshana because that's connected to Sukkot, but even then it was always called Hoshana, so that's not considered to be a Shinu Hashem, and therefore we need instead the Yish and the Shinu Rishus in order to be kind. Question 8. Madua Eged Halulav Lo Yahavi Shinu Maisa. So we already answered that question. That was that same as TB11. V'lo Yahavi Shinu Hashem Liknos. V'lo Yahavi Shinu Hashem Liknos Agazlan. It's not a Shinu Hashem because Shinu Hashem Lo Yahavi Kivadi Bikar Nami Kari Hoshana. Adkan.